Finally, a dashboard video. Now, today's dashboard video that I'm going to be showing you how to create was actually based on something I actually did create in a production environment, and the use case is similar as well. Now, this video is actually going to incorporate content from 3 separate videos I created. Because not only do I want to show you guys how to do stuff, but I really do also want to make you guys better developers. And by tying videos together and showing you how all this stuff works together, I think that's the best way to do that. Now, those 3 videos are the clustering algorithm, the demographics video where I show you how to download demographics data for free to use in your analytics, and the previous video I did, which is how to apply a mapping key so your mapping widgets will work. And I'll put links to those videos or cards up at the top of the screen as we progress through the video. Now, without further ado, let's get started. Hey guys, James from the future here. I just want to apologize that this video does start off a little slow and I probably show you a little too much detail, but I just want to reassure you that it does start to move quicker through the magic of editing as the video goes on. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so here's the situation. Let's suppose we are an online business that sells products to customers across the entire country. Now, our marketing department has asked us to help them identify high-value zip codes. And they would like us to use these zip codes as the blueprint to find other potential high-value zip codes that they could potentially market to. So what we're going to be doing today is building an interactive dashboard that our marketing department can use to accomplish this goal. Alright, now before we get started, let me just demonstrate this dashboard to you and show you how it works and what the idea behind it is. Now, as you know, it's to do zip code analysis. Alright, so what I've done here is I have zoomed in over New York here, and I have selected this zip code, 11530. As you can see when we hover over it, you can see the zip code and the profit. Now, when I click that zip code, these metrics at the top of the screen will update to reflect that zip code. So you can see we have revenue LY, profit last year, and units sold last year. So whatever zip code you select, I'll click this one, 10001, and those metrics update, right? And then we'll go back to 11530, and you can see the metrics at the top of the screen update. So those are our KPIs for this zip code. Now, you'll also notice when I click choose a zip code, this box over here on the right, the upper right, it says demographics, this box will also refresh. Now, the idea behind this is this. As you can see, this zip code 11530 is shaded green, right? So that means it's a high value zip code. That means we sell well, right? So I've shaded these zip codes based on sales, right? So the higher the sales, the more green, the lower the sales, the more negative, right? But you could shade it based on any metrics you want. Okay, and the idea behind it is, if this zip code is green and it's a high value zip code, meaning we do well in that zip code, our company performs well in that area, we would also want to know what characteristics about that area make us sell well, right? Why do we sell on that area, right? What is it about that area that is profitable for us, right? That makes it high value. Well, one thing could be demographics, right? So if you look over here on the right, we have demographics for that chosen zip code. So we have the median income, right? What's the income of the average income or the median income of the people in that zip code? What's the total population in that zip code, right? What's the population breakout, male versus female? Maybe what's the unemployment percent in that zip code, right? So there are many characteristics of these zip codes that could be the reason why we do well in those zip codes. Okay. Now, if you come down, look below this, you'll see click here to see similar zip codes for cluster 3. Now let me explain this a little bit. Okay, so when you click this link, I've already clicked it, but this grid beneath it will refresh, okay? Now, what are these zip codes? You can see there's a list of zip codes here, right? And the corresponding revenue, profit, and units sold. Now, these zip codes are similar zip codes as the link implies, and these zip codes are matched or paired with the zip code we've selected based on a clustering algorithm. Now, I have a video on that. I'll put a link up at the top of the screen to that so you can go check that out and see how that works. But the idea behind it is this. It will group zip codes into clusters or groups based on whatever attributes you choose. In this case, I've chosen demographics. So as soon as you click this link, we know zip code 11530 is in group 3, right? So what are the other zip codes in that group? And the idea is this: if we want to see other zip codes that could potentially be high value zip codes, right? So it's an easy way to find zip codes. So this dashboard is basically an easy way to find zip codes that are high value to us, that we perform well in, and then to find other zip codes that are similar, right? Based on demographics. So now let's take a look at this. So I have it sorted on revenue. So as you can see, zip code 48126. This is a zip code where we do pretty well into. Let's take a look at the zip code. So we'll interact with the map here. We'll type in the zip code 48126. We'll press enter, and as you can see, the map automatically zooms in over that zip code. We will click it, and you can see the metrics at the top of the screen. The KPIs have updated to reflect zip code 48126, and the demographics section over here on the right has also updated to show the demographics for that zip code. And that's the idea behind the zip code. Now, the mapping feature that we're using is ESRI Maps. I also have a video on how to set that up if you've never used that before. So if you're on any version 10.6 and below, you have to apply a map key, but I do have a video on how to set that up. I'll put a link at the top of the screen. Anyway, so that's the idea behind the zip code analysis dashboard. Let's jump in, and I will show you how to create this. All right, guys, one quick thing here. If you notice that your attributes are not working in the mapping widget, you may want to come down to your attribute editor here and check this option for geographical role. So as you can see here, I've edited the zip code attribute, and geographical role, I've selected zip code. Yeah, that lets MicroStrategy know that this is actually a geographical attribute, so that might help out and get things working for you. All right, now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to click Create at the top here. We're going to select New Document, and we'll select this template here, Title and Content. All right, so the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to add our data sets. So we'll come over here and click Add Datasets, and we will add sales by zip code, and then we'll add another data set for like zip codes. Okay, great. So now we have our data sets. Okay, now next thing we do is we're going to add a basic structure to our dashboard. So as you can see at the top here, the template we chose gave us 2 panels. So there's one panel at the top. This is where we'll put all of our header information, right? And the panel at the bottom here, this is where our main content will go. So let's start setting this up. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a widget, and that is our mapping widget. So we'll come down here and we'll select map, and we'll draw that in the upper left like you saw on the demo dashboard. Okay, great. Now the next thing we'll do is we will come in here and we'll add another panel. This is where our demographics information is going to go. So we'll go Insert, Panel, and we'll draw that over here. And then finally we'll add one more panel, and this is where actually no, we don't need a panel. We'll just add the grid for our similar zip codes beneath this panel, so that's fine. So what I always like to do is I always like to get rid of, we'll come down to right click, Properties and Formatting. I like to get rid of the title. Don't need that. All right, now the next thing we'll do is let's start changing the colors here. So now if you're not familiar with MicroStrategy, this is just a regular panel up here, but there are such things as panel stacks, right? And what a panel stack is, if you've never worked with them before, they're just exactly that. They're stacks of panels, right? They allow you to layer panels on top of each other, right? Make a better use of space, right? And then you could toggle between the panels. So that's what a panel stack is. I just kind of want to explain things as I go along. Now, let's go ahead. We'll change the color here. We will change the fill color, and we'll make it similar to our dashboard. I believe that was the color. Then we'll come in here. We will insert text, and we'll call this zip code analysis. Okay, and we will increase the font size. We'll make that white, and we'll make it 20, let's say. Let's see how that looks. Oh, and let's change the color. No fill. There we go. Oh, Yep, and no borders. Okay, good. Great. All right, now let's move this panel stack up a little closer. I may want to bring that down a bit. That's fine. And then we'll move this over a little bit. And let's move these widgets down so we can add our KPIs. Okay, great. Now, let's add to our mapping widget. Let's get this set up first. So let's add, what we're going to do is we're going to want to add our sales by zip code. So let's add, obviously, zip code. We'll drag that over the rows. And then we will add our metrics over the metrics. So let's add, what do we have? I think we shaded based on profit. So let's add profit to the metrics. Okay, great. You know what? Let's save this. I haven't even saved this yet. So we'll click save. And we'll save this into our demo dashboard folder. And then we'll call this demo zip code dashboard. Always want to save your work because you never know when things can fail on you. And then you lose everything. And there we go. So I just ran it, saved it and ran it real quick. And you can see our mapping feature is already working. So that's a good sign. So let's go, we'll edit this and let's continue. Okay, next, you know what? Let's finish our structure here. So let's drag this up and let's add another panel, and that's where we're going to put our KPIs. So we'll come over here, we'll go insert, panel stack, and we'll draw this right at the top here. And again, we always want to I always get rid of the title. Now, always want to give them a good name too. So let's come into properties and formula. Let's give this a good name. So we'll call this our KPI panel stack. And we'll click OK. And let's also name this panel here where our demographics are going to be. We'll call this demographics panel stack. And you'll see why that's important a little later. Now let's go ahead and create our header panel. So let's add some text to this. So we'll add text, and we'll call this revenue. I believe this color was, let's change the colors on this, properties formatting. No fill. Font we'll make orange. We'll make it bold. Okay, there you go. All right. Let's insert another text box. Okay, and we're going to drag over our revenue metric. We'll drag that, see how that text box highlights when you drag it over, and then there, that'll populate. Now, let's set the properties and formatting. Now, I'm not going to make you sit through all these. What I'll do is I'll show you how to do one, and then I'll do the rest to save you the time. So I think we made that green, so we'll come and make that green. We'll make that bold. We'll make that bigger. We'll make that 16. Colors, we'll make that, again, no fill, and we'll click OK. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the rest, and then the rest of these and the rest of the KPIs, and then we'll move forward from there. Actually, there is one trick I want to show you real quick, and that's how to quickly apply formatting. So I'm going to do this next revenue LY metric here. So I'm going to go insert text. I will draw that there, and I will insert last year's revenue. I'll drag that over. Now, as you can see, it's not formatted. So what we can do here is we can select apply control defaults. Oops, I meant to say set control defaults. And then we can right click here and now click apply control defaults. And as you can see, that formatting automatically was copied over to our new text box. All right, so now I went ahead and added the other metrics to our KPIs. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to come in here, we're going to add in our image. So we'll come in here, we'll go insert image, we'll add our image up here. Now images need to be hosted on a server somewhere. So I've hosted them. If you're using IIS, I just put a folder in the root of my IIS, like C, INETPub, WW root, images, and I just put my images in there. But they do need to be hosted on a server somewhere. You can't just select them from your desktop. So put the path in there, and again, this is just hosted in a folder in my IIS. If you're using Windows. If not, Tomcat. But yeah. So we'll come in here. As you see, the image appears in the preview. We'll click OK. We will resize it a bit. All right, you get the idea. So there we go. All right, so the next thing we want to do is let's set up our demographics panel over here on the right. So we'll take zip code from the left and we'll drag it over to our panel. And then let's change the formatting. We'll make this white. And we'll click OK. Okay, great. Now what we want to do is let's add our other demographic information here. So we'll add another text box. We'll insert text. We'll draw that over here. And we'll call that median income. And we'll move that over. And again, we'll change the properties and formatting. And we'll make that white. And we'll shrink down the size a bit. Make that 12. Okay, great. Now, that's our label. Now let's actually add our median income. Let's right click. We'll set control default. And let's drag our median household income attribute over here. Or metric, I should say. And there we go. So now I'll go ahead and do the rest, and we'll continue from there. All right. So now we've added our demographic information. As you can see, I've also added our little orange lines here, our little separator lines here. So now you can see it's really starting to take shape and look like our demo dashboard that I demonstrated earlier. Okay, now the next thing we're going to want to do is let's select our targets for our map, for our zip code, right? So we're going to come over here to our mapping grid. We're going to right click our zip code. We're going to select use as selector. You're going to want to come over here, and up here is where we can select our targets, right? So remember when I said naming the panels will be important later? Well, now's when that is important, right? So now we can select our demographics panel stack, and we know what that is, right? Because we named it properly. And we can select our KPI panel stack. Those are the KPIs at the top, in between the orange lines. And we can select that. Those are now our selected targets. Apply selection as filter, yes, and we'll click create. Okay, great. Now the one thing I want to point out here is you can also do this another way. You can also choose this option here to select targets, and then what you can do is instead of using the interface I did before and dragging them over, you can just click what you want to select as a target. The other thing I want to point out is you may get a message, because what MicroStrategy usually does is it will try to handle this automatically. I always like to explicitly select my targets. So when you go to choose your targets, you may get a message from MicroStrategy saying, this will basically break the automatic handling of targets, and you'll have to handle them manually. Is that okay? Yes or no? I always click yes, and because like I said, I like to explicitly set my targets manually. But yeah, other than that, that's how you set the targets. So now when we click on our zip codes, our KPIs at the top and our demographic information will change to reflect the zip code that we have selected. Now the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to edit our widget properties for our map. So we're going to come over here and we'll select our object here. We'll click properties and formatting, and then we'll come over to our widget, select the widget option, and then down here at the bottom you'll see this little gear icon. It will be widget properties. We'll come over and select that. Now show areas, attribute zip code, and we're going to want to also select zip code for the shape file. So we'll select zip code down here, click OK, click apply, click OK, and then let's go ahead and save our dashboard. All right, now let's go ahead and run our dashboard and see what it looks like so far. So we'll click on presentation mode, and sometimes you have to click this plus sign here to get the map to appear. It can be a little quirky sometimes. Let's go ahead and zoom into New York. And okay, now you can see we have our shaded regions. These are our zip codes. When we click the zip codes, our KPIs at the top have updated to reflect zip code 11530, and so have our demographics on the right. All right, so we still have some formatting to do. As you can see, our demographics information doesn't look quite the way we want it to, but I do want to show you one other thing. Let's come over here and we'll click edit our dashboard. Now, sometimes an easier way to make changes like this, tweak things, is to use editable mode. Okay, editable mode will allow you to look at the dashboard in a somewhat presentation mode. As you can see, so I'll click that. That's this icon at the top. Now, as you can see, our map isn't what we want it to be. It just displays as a grid, right? So all the features aren't going to work here, but it allows you to work with the dashboard in a somewhat live view. Okay, so it's very easy to make changes like this. Like we can see our demographics information. We don't want these borders here, right? So we can come in here, click properties and formatting, and colors and line, borders none. Click OK, right? We can also center this, right? So we'll go alignment, center, right? So you can actually edit the dashboard in a somewhat live view. So it makes it a little bit easier. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this up, and then we'll go ahead from there. All right, so I got the demographics information all cleaned up, looking a lot better. Now the other thing I want to point out here, if you come over to the map on the left, if you'll notice, the zip codes, they are shaded. That was when we edited the widget properties that allowed us to do that. But if you notice, the color's all the same. They're just this light blue. So now I'm going to go ahead and show you how we can shade this based on a metric. All right, now in order to do that, we're going to come in here and we'll edit our dashboard. Okay, and we can go into editable mode for this. Makes it a little bit easier. Now we're going to apply thresholding to a profit, and that will enable us to shade based on the profit. So we'll come here, we'll right-click profit, select thresholds, we'll select visual, and now we can create buckets on which to shade in. So the way I did this in the demonstration was I created 4 buckets, right? So the bottom 25% would be red, the next group of 25%, the next group would be yellow, the next would be orange, the next group would be green, right? You can shade it however you want. That's just an example. So here we can create our buckets. So we'll select from 0 to 25, from 25 to 50. So let's double click here, and now we can select our color. So we'll go colors and lines. We'll select orange. Click OK. We can add a group here. Actually, you know what? Let's make this group red. Yeah, that makes more sense. I mean, green. Sorry, that's going to be our top zip codes. We'll make those deep green. Okay. Now, in order to add a group, if you hover over this bar here and you select this option here, add threshold. That's how I did that. Now let's double click here. Let's make this group. Oh, I don't know. We'll make them a lighter shade of green. Click OK. And we'll double click this group here. We'll make them, let's say, yellow. Click OK. And then this bottom group here, we'll make them red. These will be our worst performers. Click OK. Okay. And we can close this. And now, the good thing about editable mode is we can see the results immediately. So now you can see how our zip codes will be shaded. So you can see 44129 will be shaded our light green, right? That was in our third bucket. So let's go into presentation mode and let's take a look at how this looks. Okay, so let's zoom into, again, New York here. And now you can see our zip codes are indeed shaded. We'll select 11530, and that is shaded green. So that would be, as we saw in the demonstration earlier, that would be one of our top performing zip codes. All right. Now, the last thing we want to do is we want to set up our similar zip code grid at the bottom. So the next thing, so what we're going to do, first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to add a new attribute here. So by default, when you use a clustering algorithm, the group values are going to be metrics. So we're going to have to turn those into attributes so we could use them in the text of our selector, right? So our selector is going to say, click here to choose similar zip codes for cluster X. You know. So let's right click. And that's the cool thing about working with these data sets like this is you can just add this stuff on the fly. So we're coming down here, we're going to insert new attribute. Click OK. Okay. We're just going to call this cluster. Now we're going to have to convert a metric into an attribute. So we're going to click we're going to use a toString function. Okay. And then we're going to drag, oops, didn't get that in the brackets there. There we go. We can drag our metric over there. Now we're going to add another attribute form. We're going to add a description. So we're going to use the concat function. And this will allow us to build that string. So we're going to say click here to see similar zip codes for, and we'll end that there, comma, another toString function because we're going to convert. And we'll drag and drop this in there, and then we'll close brackets, close parentheses. So now this will concatenate these two values. So we'll concatenate this with the value of this. So we'll click save. Okay. Now the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to click insert, and we're going to insert a selector. So we'll insert a link bar. And we'll add this right over here. We'll go into the properties and formatting, selector, and we will choose our new cluster attribute that we just created. We'll click OK. Great. Oh, let's do one more thing. Let's get rid of the show option for all. Okay, that looks better. Now let's go ahead and save this, and then we will add our grid. But before we add our grid, actually, we want to make sure that we add this new selector to our targets for our zip code. So when we click on a zip code, that selector will change to represent the group that we've selected. So we'll go over here, we'll click Edit Selector. Now this shows the reason to name your objects properly, because which one is that? We know we only have one selector, so it's selector 183. So we'll go ahead and add that over here. But as you can see, as you start to add more objects, it becomes important to name them, so when you have to add them as a target or whatever, for whatever reason, you know what they are and you can easily identify them. So okay, so we've added that. We'll click OK. Maybe we'll change the text there to make that say group 3 or what have you. Okay, so now let's go ahead and add our grid. So when we click here, it actually does filter something and shows us our similar zip codes. Alright, so we'll come into edit our zip code, edit our dashboard, come down here, and what we'll do is, we can do this the easy way. We can take this whole data set, we can drag it over here, and then that will add it for us. Now the only thing is it adds every single metric. We're not interested in those. We just want revenue, profit, and units sold. So I'll come in here and I'll just right click and I'll remove all the metrics we don't want on here from the grid, since by default it adds them. Okay, there we go. Now we have our grid. Let's resize this a bit. Okay, now what we want to do is when we click on this selector, we want this grid to be filtered based on the groups. So let's right click, properties and formatting, selector. We want to select, this is the grid we just added, the zip code like cluster grid. We'll add that to our targets and we'll click on OK. Now the other thing we said we wanted to do is we wanted to change the what is displayed in the selector so it makes a little more sense. So we'll come here, we'll click edit, we'll go over to our description for, and we'll just add group space here. So now the text will make a little bit more sense. Okay, let's save our work. And let's go ahead and run this. All right, now let's hover over. Let's see. Yeah, I guess we can go to New York. Click that. Click 1101. Click this, and there, as you can see, our grid updated to show similar zip codes for group 3. As soon as I click that, this updated. So now that's working. Now, the only thing left to do now is we'll clean this up, make it look like it did in the demo, and then we should be done. Now, the best way to do that, I think, is in editable mode. So we'll come down here, we'll click Edit, and then we'll click Editable Mode at the top. We'll scroll down to our grid, and we'll right-click, Advanced Formatting. And this is where we can format our grid. So we'll select all metrics, all the headers. We'll do a fill color. We'll do this like charcoal color. We'll select the font. We'll make that white. Click apply. And as you can see now that's starting to take shape. Then we'll come down here. We'll select our row axis, our headers, and we'll do the same there. Font color will be white. Background color will be this charcoal color. We'll click apply. And now we'll go, let's go our grid container. Fill color will be that. Let's go all grid cells. Values. We'll make that charcoal as well, the background. And then the font, we will also make that white. Okay. And there, now as you can see, our grid has started to take shape. And let's click in presentation mode. And we'll just, why not, keep going over to New York. Select our zip code. Great. Good to see similar zip codes. Everything's working. Cool. All right. So that'll do it. As you can see, this looks pretty close to our demo dashboard. So the one thing I do want to point out here is the reason that we had to create this selector here, because you might be saying, well, why don't we just automatically choose this grid, this similar zip codes grid as a target when we click on our zip codes, right? Why do we have to do this extra step and click this to filter for similar zip codes? And the reason for that is, it's because right here we're using zip code as our attribute to target these other grids, right? So when we click zip code 11530, it then looks up the demographics for zip code 11530, right? We can only use one attribute as a target. That's the reason. We can't say, okay, when I click this zip code, I want you to filter all the metrics up here and demographics based on zip code, but I want you to filter this grid down here based on the clustering group. We can only choose one. That's the reason. So we had to take this extra step here by creating this selector, clicking it to show the similar zip codes. That's the reason for that. Yeah, but hopefully you learned a lot here today, and you can now create stunning dashboards. All right, so that'll do it. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and check me out on jamestechtips.com for more BI related content. And as always, thanks for watching.